Joining us is Byron York. He's the chief political correspondent for the Washington Examiner. Thanks for being with us, Lord Byron.
Hey, Fred, good to be here.
You've written recently that Obamacare is haunted by unkept promises of stimulus. So you think that the stimulus package is hurting him on health care? Is that the point?
Absolutely. There's 2 or 3 reasons why. One, it spent a lot of money that he wishes he had now. But the bigger thing is, I think in terms of the president's credibility, here was a situation in which the president and Democrats in Congress pushed through a bill. It was rush, don't even read it. Remember, they had made handwritten changes and then Xeroxed them, and that was the bill, and rushed this thing out the door. And now people have a very different idea about the stimulus. At the time, they were scared about the economy. They supported it. They knew it had a lot of pork barrel spending in it, but they supported it anyway. Now the polls show majority of the people, 60+% of the people say it hadn't made any change in their lives, and 20% of the people say it's made their financial situation worse. Latest poll in Gallup, only 15% said it had made it better. So now, President and Democrats want to push through another $1 trillion bill and without anybody reading it, rush, and it's hurting them this time.
Well, as I think about it, makes what you say makes a lot of sense because, for one thing, now people are used to asking the question, "Have you read the bill?"
Exactly, and that's what got started after this stimulus, because clearly nobody had read it. I remember talking to Charles Grassley, senator from Iowa, who was on the House Senate Reconciliation Committee that put the final bill together, the conference committee, and he didn't even know what was in it. I mean, it got passed by the Democrats there, and he didn't even know what was in it. Now it's harder to do with health care. As a matter of fact, Republicans have had study groups in the House and the Senate where they're studying carefully what's in the bills. And as a matter of fact, my guess is your average Republican member of Congress now knows better what's in the Democratic bill than the Democrats do.
But I like your point too that the stimulus just didn't work, and it's not working, and people see the fruits of large government spending, and they're not good. What about the cap and trade bill? A lot of the Democrats, seems to me like over in the House, are saying, especially the Blue Dogs, hey, we gave it the office. We voted for a cap and trade bill that we really didn't like. Now you're asking us to do the same sort of thing again.
Well, you've been in Congress, and you know what happens if you force a lawmaker to walk out on a limb and vote for something, and then he worries that it doesn't get passed at all. It happened back in the Clinton years. Early in the Clinton years, they wanted to pass something called a BTU tax. The House voted for it, and then the Senate kind of killed it. And all those House Democrats who had voted for this thing were slaughtered in the next election when their opponents said, look, he voted to raise this tax and that tax. Well, you have the same situation here where a lot of Democrats, took the risk voting for the cap and trade bill. Now the cap and trade bill is stuck in the Senate, don't know where it's going to go, if ever. Having 60 Democrats, which is a filibuster-proof majority, has not been, utter bliss for the Democrats so far. So, yeah, a lot of conservative Democrats are worried about it.
Let me ask you about this controversy with the Cambridge police and Professor Gates of Harvard. A lot of people are saying, and the Rasmussen poll indicates, that the president lost out politically on this controversy and the stupidity comment. I have a little bit different read on this, Byron. It seems to me, Jerry and I were talking about this days earlier. Actually, she brought it up because the president's been taking a lot of grief on call-in shows like Al Sharpton, things like that, for him not aligning himself enough with their causes. And this article here, Brent Staples in the New York Times a few days ago was talking about how miffed the president was because the press played his NAACP speech situation in a way that overemphasized his remarks about personal responsibility. I think the president premeditatedly determined that he needed to enhance his credibility, to enhance his street cred, and that he did it, and he had to pull back from it. But on balance, as you know, in a political campaign, it's not just kind of who's kind of for you, who's kind of against you. It's the passion and intensity, and I think he got that passion and intensity in the black community back for himself.
Well, if he did that, I think it may have been a miscalculation. I think what you're saying is
he may have accidentally done something politically wise. Huh?
But, last Gallup poll I saw, Barack Obama's job approval rating among black voters is 94%. So, he's doing quite well there. I do think that he created a lot of problems for himself, jumping in this and reflexively taking the position of Professor Gates against the police department. Now, when you hear Professor Gates and the White House say it's time to move on, whenever somebody says it's time to move on, it means we need to know more about what's happening. And we're just now hearing these 911 tapes and the tapes of the transmissions between Sergeant Crowley and police headquarters. So maybe we'll learn a little bit more about this, but clearly I think the consensus is the president just kind of stepped in it when he said what he said about behaving stupidly.
Byron, he may have, it's Jerry, he may have stepped in it and inadvertently did it, but there definitely was a visceral response, even though it could have been a pre-planned question. Remember all the criticism that he took for throwing Reverend Wright under the bus.
Well, you're absolutely right about that. On the pre-planned thing, Lynn Sweet of the Chicago Tribune, who asked the question, says absolutely not. But I think anybody who watched that news conference saw that when the president was asked that question at the very end, he became more animated and more interested, and it seemed to be much more engaged with the topic than he had been in the previous 50 minutes going on and on and on about health care. It seemed to be something that he really cared about deeply, and I think people got that impression.
I think the president from time to time has felt the necessary to establish his street cred. I think that's why he went back to become a community organizer in Chicago. I think that's why he hung around Reverend Wright's church all those years and listened to so much of that baloney, because it was the thing to do. The man's very ambitious and felt like he needed to do it. I think it's a part of that. How much time we got with quickly on Sotomayor? You think the Republicans missed an opportunity there?
Well, I thought that, that when you listen to the Senate Judiciary Committee hearings, and even without Senator Biden, who is probably the biggest talker ever in the history of the Senate Judiciary Committee, I thought the Republicans did a little too much speechifying and a little, not quite enough asking very specific questions about what Sotomayor had done in her career. Because the question with Sotomayor was, she made these speeches sounding like almost a legal radical, and then she came into the hearing and presented herself almost as a strict constructionist. So the question is, how do you resolve that? And in her work with the Puerto Rican Legal Defense and Education Fund, she had put some of those theories into action on issues like affirmative action, the death penalty, and abortion. And I thought there was more for Republicans to examine, but you have to do it in kind of a disciplined, prosecutorial, question kind of way.
We needed a Fred Thompson.
Discipline is not a word you hear very often up there. Byron,
Mr. Thompson would have been great on that committee.
Thank you very, very much.